Hey, what's going on, Grace Church family? Hey, I'm excited to come to you as we talk about this Discovery Group series. This is Jesus. And during this first session, what we're talking about is how God is Christ-like. And that's such a huge principle and such a huge thing that we need to grasp as Christ followers is the fact that God is Christ-like, that God chose to express himself in Jesus to us. And that's huge. I mean, first, the fact that God chose to, that was a decision, that was a desire that he made. He didn't have to express himself to us through Jesus. He decided and made a decision that he wanted to show us who he was. And he did that through the life of Jesus, not just through what Jesus said, but through what Jesus did. His actions and his words is how he expressed himself through Jesus. So the cool thing about that is Jesus is our opportunity to see and to know God. Now, just think about that for a moment. Whenever we say that God chose to express himself through Jesus, it says in Hebrews that Jesus is the exact expression of God. And that's one of the things that makes Jesus different than the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, you had the prophets who at times they spoke on behalf of God, but their entire life was not the exact expression of God. I mean, look at Elisha after all. Some kids made fun of him because he was going bald, and then boom, he brings up two bears to maul him to death. So that's not really the exact expression of God. So all of their lives were not, but Jesus was. Jesus came and he's like, look at me, look at everything that I am, everything that I say, and everything you see me do, everything that I say is an expression of my Father. So that gives us an amazing opportunity to build a relationship with God. And, you know, I think there are times that you see throughout Jesus's ministry where there are things that he said and he did that he really didn't have to do. But I believe that he did those to show us who God is and what God says. Like, take, for instance, you know, whenever he healed the man who was blind, he didn't have to really spit and make mud and do all that. He could have just said, be healed. It could have just made it happen. But he chose to do that because by doing that, he showed his disdain for religion, his disdain for the way that the Pharisees had all these rules and regulations. So again, in doing that, he was showing us a little bit more of who God is and what God values. Or, you know, you look at the fact that whenever he healed the man with leprosy, he didn't have to reach out and touch the man for him to be healed. He could have just said, be healed. But he wanted to show his compassion and his love and his value for that person. So again, in that moment, I believe there are things that Jesus did during his ministry that he really didn't have to do, but he did to express who God is. So, you know, as I think about, well, how do we apply that, or what does that look like in our lives? First is understanding what a blessing that is. Again, God did not have to express himself. He chose to. That was a desire that he had. And that also, to me, speaks to the fact that God wants a relationship with you, because he doesn't just say, well, I want to know who you are. It's not one-sided. He's like, not only do I want to know who you are, you know, and it talks about that, I believe in Ephesians, that not only do we know God, but that now we are known by God. But it's not just one-sided. He also says, okay, I want to know you, but I also want you to know me as well. And how I'm going to do that is through my son, Jesus. And that's what makes this such a beautiful relationship, is we have an example. And for me personally, whenever I read through the Gospels now, that takes on a whole new light, because I don't have to ask the questions, well, what is God like? Or what does God say? Or what does God feel? Or what does he do? I can look at the entire life of Jesus and see who God is, what he says, what he values. And that makes this so much more intimate and so much more personal. So as you are in your discovery groups, what I want you to do as y'all are going to be discussing, just think about that. Think about all the things that Jesus said and what he did, and knowing now that he is the exact expression of God. What does that say about God? It shows how loving he is, how just he is, how forgiving he is. All those things, all those attributes that we attribute to Jesus, that is who God is. So Grace Church family, enjoy yourself, enjoy the discussion, and we'll see you next time.